Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're a B2B procurement manager, a wholesaler, or running commercial projects, you already know the game has changed. The old days of just hunting down generic hardware factories and, crossing your fingers and hoping for the best, those days are completely over. Today, we're unpacking the 2026 procurement playbook for sourcing China's Tier 1 hardware. We're tackling this strictly from a professional procurement perspective, so we'll be breaking down the exact logic you need to select top-tier suppliers. And we're going to put a massive focus on three things: tight technical specifications, rigorous factory audits, and highly optimized logistics strategies. Okay, let's dive right into this. If there's a defining mantra for 2026, it's this: the priority is no longer just finding the absolute lowest price. It's all about supply chain stability, strict technical compliance, and real OEM or ODM capabilities. The sourcing landscape has evolved so incredibly fast. You aren't just looking for a shop that can bend a piece of metal for pennies anymore. You need established, industry-leading brands that bring massive manufacturing scale to the table, right alongside sophisticated research and development. If your supplier isn't an R&D powerhouse today, they're honestly just going to fall behind.
So here is our playbook for today. 1. The 2026 sourcing landscape. 2. Technical specifications control. 3. Factory audits and QC. 4. Logistics strategy. And 5. Verification and regional hubs. Let's jump in.
Starting off with Section 1, the 2026 sourcing landscape.
The Chinese hardware market right now is incredibly specialized. Whether you're outfitting some massive multi-story commercial build or just stocking shelves for a retail tool brand, your choice of supplier simply cannot be random. You really have to align with highly specialized industrial clusters. Just looking at some of the top Tier 1 suppliers dominating the export market right now, you can see how distinctly focused they are. For heavy infrastructure, you've got a titan like Qinlong. They operate this massive one-stop procurement model with true engineering-grade safety certs. Over in furniture, DTC is basically the Bloom of China, utilizing these insanely fast automated production lines for cabinetry brands. Down in security, a brand like Kata's is just pouring resources into biometric tech and smart home R&D. And for tools, WorkPro has the global scale to support massive retailers. The takeaway here? You don't just pick a factory, you partner with the dominant force in your exact niche.
Moving right along to Section 2, Technical Specifications Control.
Now, what's really interesting here is the shift from the who to the how. Sourcing from Tier 1 giants requires a completely different playbook than your typical small-scale sourcing. If you bring an amateur mindset to a massive Tier 1 manufacturer, it's just not going to work out. The contrast in communication is actually pretty stark. In amateur sourcing, someone asks for hinges and just kind of hopes for the best. But in professional procurement, no way. You show up with complete CAD drawings. You explicitly require, say, SUS 316 stainless steel, which actually contains added molybdenum for serious marine-grade corrosion resistance, instead of settling for basic SUS 304. You dictate exactly whether the finish needs to be a PVD coating or a powder coating. This exact level of technical specification is non-negotiable for Tier 1 suppliers. Honestly, it's the only language they speak.
Which brings us to Section 3, Factory Audits and QC.
Once you've nailed down those technical specs, you actually have to make sure the factory can execute them compliantly, which is absolutely vital if you're exporting into highly regulated markets like Europe or the US. And for 2026, ESG is not just some corporate buzzword you can ignore, it's a strict operational mandate. Environmental, social, and governance compliance is absolutely critical for bulk buyers now. This is a huge reason why everyone is shifting to Tier 1 manufacturers. Giant players like Qinlong and DTC already have the infrastructure in place to provide legitimate ESG certs. Smaller workshops, they simply can't pass these audits, and that means your goods will literally get stalled at customs, creating massive compliance bottlenecks. Partnering up with the Tier 1 giants eliminates that headache instantly.
Now, beyond the paperwork of ESG, your physical quality control strategy has to be tiered. Step 1 is DoPro. That's your during production inspection. This is where you're actively checking for material consistency while the items are literally still moving down the assembly line. Step 2 is the PSI, or pre-shipment inspection. And for hardware, I can't stress this enough. This is non-negotiable. Before a single item gets loaded into a container, you have to test for surface defects, rust resistance, and crucially, weight-bearing tolerances. Think about it. A bracket that fails under a heavy load is a massive lawsuit waiting to happen on a commercial project. You have to catch that failure on the factory floor, not weeks later when it arrives at your warehouse.
All right, let's talk about Section 4, Logistics Strategy.
And this brilliantly illustrates one of the most unique challenges in our industry. Hardware procurement comes with a very literal, heavy-lifting problem. Unlike shipping clothes or consumer electronics, hardware is unbelievably dense. In fact, it's so heavy that you might hit a shipping container's maximum legal weight limit when it's barely a third full. That's exactly why bulk buyers need to apply strict professional logic here. You want to negotiate FOB, or free on board terms. Please do not rely on the factory to handle the shipping for you. You really need to manage your own trusted freight forwarders to optimize those sea freight costs. The entire goal is to maximize your heavy container utilization, making sure you aren't paying premium shipping rates just to move a container full of empty air because it hit its weight cap too fast.
Finally, Section 5, Verification and Regional Hubs. Getting your technical, QC, and logistics strategies in order is great. But to really execute, you have to know how to verify a supplier's claims and physically where you need to travel to find these specialized industrial clusters. The Chinese hardware market is incredibly regional. You can't just fly into any random manufacturing city and expect to find what you need. If you're looking for furniture hardware like concealed hinges or drawer slides, you absolutely must go to Foshan in Guangdong. Sourcing hand tools, your best bets are Hangzhou or Ningbo in Zhejiang, or maybe Linyi in Shandong. And for the heavy architectural hardware and smart locks, you want to head straight to Zhangjiang and Jiangmen. Knowing this physical geography is the key to bypassing middlemen, who are honestly just buying from these exact same hubs anyway.
Now let's tackle a couple of common friction points we always hear about. First, do these massive Tier 1 suppliers accept small minimum order quantities? Generally speaking, no they don't. Giants like DTC are built entirely around high volume. If you're a smaller startup, you're probably going to need to buy through their authorized wholesale distributors. Second question, are Chinese smart locks actually globally compatible? Absolutely, yes. Premium brands like Kadas, for instance, are building specifically for the export market right now. They ensure their locks integrate flawlessly with global smart home protocols like Matter, Zigbee, and Bluetooth.
Okay, here is perhaps the single most critical verification question you can ask. How do you rigorously verify the actual material grade of your hardware? Because in professional procurement, you never ever rely on verbal promises from any supplier. It doesn't matter how stellar their reputation is.
So, the crucial point is this. You demand the documentation, and then you independently test it. First up, you explicitly request a material mill certificate directly from the supplier. But you don't stop there. Second, you run an independent salt spray test. And if you are buying hardware meant for the outdoors or a bathroom, you need to run that test for 24, 48, or even 72 hours. This is quite literally the only definitive way to know if that outdoor hinge is actually going to survive a wet winter, or if it's just going to rust out and completely ruin your commercial project in 2 months.
Which brings us to the ultimate question you really need to be asking yourself right now. Take a hard look at your current supply chain. Are your current suppliers truly equipped for the strict ESG compliance, the rigid technical specs, and the smart tech demands of 2026? Are you still stuck playing the old game with generic factories? Or are you executing your sourcing at the Tier 1 level? Because honestly, the supply chain of 2026 isn't going to wait around for anyone to catch up. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Now get out there, audit those specs, and I will see you next time.